One of the mystifying phrases that I'm hoping to figure out is how to tap into yourself. And Roxy Rusek is a coach and healer who helps people to unlock life's pleasure potential by helping us to understand the languages of the self. Pleasure potential. Let's do it. It's time to get excited because you can achieve that magical combination of happiness and productivity that you've been craving. That voice that says you can't, or not now, is total mind BS. Roxy, welcome. The concept of pleasure potential. I am super excited about this because I want more pleasure. Like, who doesn't want more pleasure in their lives?
Who doesn't? Who doesn't?
So before we get started, can you help us understand what is holding us back from reaching that pleasure potential in the first place?
Yes. So I speak to people and work with people through the language of psychosomatic work. And that entails working with the body and the mind and all the energetic imprints that we absorb, collect, and are exposed to throughout our lifetimes. So what that means, it could mean our experiences when we're young, when we're children. It could mean our mother's experiences. It could mean the experiences of our grandparents, our collective like environment that is around us when we're growing up. So when we're moving through life, when we're growing up, we have experiences. We either feel safe or we don't. We either feel like we can fully express ourselves or we feel like we can't or it's not safe to. So depending on what imprints that we carry in our bodies or what trauma, if we're speaking in that language, um, that either allows energy to flow through our bodies or it's contracted. And there's energetic blocks that turn into physical blocks that turn into diseases. So any type of energetic imbalance in ancient Chinese medicine is just an energetic imbalance, but we call it a disease. It over time it becomes so imbalanced that it forms a disease or a more physical block. So essentially, the way we're meant to live in pleasure. We're meant to enjoy. We're meant to be light. And of course, our nervous system over centuries has become so dysregulated that our bodies feel like we're in a place of threat when there is no threat. So that is an energetic block to pleasure. So the way I work with people and the way when we look through psychosomatic work as a lens on people, we can look at things a little bit differently, right? Not at the surface level. Okay, like why are you not experiencing pleasure? Like this is supposed to be fun, right? Or like why can't you just switch it on? Well, there's a reason. Like there's so many layers to that. And when we address the body to the actual experience or the trauma, and we allow ourselves to be held in a safe space to let go of that like contraction or that almost like a pin, like a red pin in our body to fully surrender to the moment of talking about it, of regulating your nervous system, of allowing yourself to feel angry if that's what needs to be moved, allowing yourself to feel sad if that's what needs to be moved, but really getting to the root of that pin that may be living in our bodies, because that's essentially all it is. We have all these pins in our bodies that are blocking us from this like waterfall of experiencing bliss, joy, pleasure, alignment, just things happening for us. And of course, things are always happening for us, not to us. It's just a matter of switching perspective, but it's speaking in a language where we feel like the universe is supporting us, not working against us. So we can certainly find or practice in kind of dissolving these pins and dissolving these contractions in the body to allow more flow and bringing in pleasure little by little, day by day, in just feeling good in our bodies, because that's essentially what it is. You know, when we feel good in the body, we feel open, we are more receptive, and it feels good to be in that state. And then we in turn radiate, and people around us get the pleasure of, or get the side effects of us feeling high vibrational, and like in good spirits, because it's contagious. So yeah, we can certainly practice removing these layers, these blocks, but also finding pleasurable moments in like the little things in the now, and how we drink coffee, in like having slow mornings, and being more conscious in the present, in the body. Forgiveness is a beautiful tool. Loving yourself is a beautiful tool to finding more pleasure. And you know, as simple as it sounds, you know, you have to ask, why are so many of us having a hard time to feel that? You know, it's because we do have traumas around love, around getting attention, around codependency, and we really are invited to dissect a little bit more, so that we can, like I keep saying, have that waterfall flow through us without any resistance.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's kind of two sides to it, where there's, the one side where you're unlocking these pins and letting the water flow. And then there's a second side where you're consciously sort of choosing happiness, choosing to enjoy the small moments, and that those two go together. So the more pins you unlock, the easier it becomes to choose happiness. Yes?
Yes, yes, for sure. And sometimes you will be asked, you know, the opposite as well. It's going to be challenging yourself to live in the now more, as you're still moving through like your own healing process. You know, it's important to understand that we're already whole. We're perfectly imperfect, and it's part of life. We're never going to be 100% healed out of something. It's just a matter of constantly bringing yourself back to center. It's constantly regulating your nervous system. And I don't mean that to sound like a burden. It's just how it is. Like, coming back to self is the most important thing you have to do. And that pleasure portal has to come from inside, because you're with yourself your whole life. You are dependent on, you know, the breath in your lungs and your internal operating system to feel things, to exist. So why not the same thing for pleasure? Of course, we have external triggers that stimulate that pleasure, but once you learn to sustain that inside, like when you can wake up and find the pleasure in just being, breathing, and like, you know, being warm, being safe, that's kind of like the platform of, if you're there, and if you can practice that every day or as much as you can, then it's going to be easier to let go of those pins, to kind of take them out and allow the flow. But you're also training your system, you're training your body, you're training your mind and your energy to stimulate that feeling already. So you are essentially rewiring your brain, changing the loop of our traumas, changing the loop of, you know, like worrying or being irritated by something, or being easily triggered. And we all have that. It's going to happen. But once we learn to self-regulate and come back to center, we have more control over how we respond to the environment around us, because, you know, it's essentially all about how we respond, not react. A reaction can be a very quick um, trigger response, but when we take a moment, take a pause, take a moment to observe and ground, we can then essentially hop on a different loop, you know, and kind of talk to ourselves internally in, okay, is this a real threat? Is it not? Or is this bringing me pleasure? Is it not? It's essentially being in the present, becoming aware through the senses, by slowing down and actually feeling and listening, and asking yourself, okay, does this bring me pleasure or does it not? Is this a threat or is this not? So kind of teaching yourself that internal language is a gateway to more pleasure, essentially.
Amazing. So now, do you have a process that helps guide people through all of these steps so that they can learn how to, do that rewiring process and tap into themselves in the moment?
Yeah, of course. So I do a lot of work with people individually, but I always say that it starts with awareness. When you're open to kind of zooming out. So when you're in a situation, it's always good to zoom out and see what's going on. See if this is actually your true and authentic response, or is this like a pattern that you just have because of something that happened to you. So becoming more aware is, like I said, connecting to those senses, to close your eyes, to slow down everything. The slower, the better. And I think we live in such a fast-paced world that slowing down seems unproductive, but that's actually the most productive thing that you can do in any conflict, in any decision making, in any way that you need to self-regulate. So connecting to closing your eyes, connecting to what you hear, what you smell, what you taste, what you like physically feel, what you emotionally feel, and seeing where that's living in your body. So you find that pin, you go after it, and then essentially talking to yourself, okay, like what does that point need? Where did it come from? How long has it been there? What's the texture? What's the color? And once you kind of give a physical description to it, you're able to then name it, identify it. You actually kind of have a focus around it. Whereas before, it was just an abstract thing. Like you don't know why you're feeling this way, you just are. But when you talk yourself through it, you can then go to that spot and then dislodge it, or bring more lightness into it, so that it becomes less contracted in you. So we do that through breath. We deepen the breath. We bring lightness into it. So depending on what it is, say, it's something around your heart, and then we identify the feeling. Okay, I feel sad. Okay, how long has that sadness been there? And you may get an answer. And what is the reason behind the sadness? It could be a recent breakup. Okay, well, am I sad because I'm lonely, or am I sad because I love that person? And then it trickles down to, kind of giving yourself in that moment the feeling that you're lacking. So you may say to yourself, okay, I'm not alone. I'm never alone. I am loved. I send this person love regardless if we're together or not. So there's many different journeys that this could take you on. This is the way I work with people is very individual. Um, but this is something that you can do yourself. The most important relationship is the one you have with yourself. Even I always say this, even when you're in a relationship with someone, you're in a relationship with two people, yourself and them. So we often forget about the one that we have with ourselves, right? So in order for you to meet someone where they're at, you have to meet yourself where you're at. Sometimes when we don't feel like we can express our desires, express what we want out of life, we're not going to get that pleasure from doing the things in life. If um for example, in our job, in our professional life, if we're doing something out of routine, if we are feeling stuck, we can't move up, move forward, we don't feel challenged, we don't feel fulfilled, but we're just doing the thing, we're doing what we're expected, and we don't really speak up for ourselves. And the fact that we want a challenge, or we want more in this career. So the fact that we are withholding our voice, we are actually self-harming, because we're creating that block inside even more. And that creates an even further block from experiencing pleasure at work, in relationships, with ourselves, with our partners, in our intimacy. Um, so this is why I was really drawn to psychosomatic work, because we're such a beautiful network and it's so connected. The things that we don't think are connected are really contributing to our overall openness, to live, to feel, to, let things roll off our shoulders and worry less. Um, so yeah, a lot of those contributing factors to our blocks in our body are of from coming from the mind, or coming from worries, from stress, from fear, from stories that we create in our heads. And majority of the thoughts that we have are two things. They are repeating, they're on repeat, so we're repeating the same stories. And then the second part of that is that they're not true. Like, a lot of them are not true. It's just they're just manifesting as stories that are really things that we're afraid of.
Yeah, I love this. And you're touching on so many different things here. And anybody who knows me knows that I love to demystify all of these concepts. And so you really demystified the concept of loving yourself in that talk, where, you kind of broke it down into speaking nicely to yourself, encouraging yourself, talking about speaking up, that's advocating for ourselves, and all of that sort of nurturing and accepting of our feelings, and all of the things that we're going through in such a loving way. That is the definition of loving yourself. And that is going to expand all sorts of different things, right? And so I'm super curious. You've talked about all of these different ways of doing this, but if somebody wanted to get started right now, today, do you have anything that would help them, guide them through the first couple of steps?
Yes, I always work with the body first. So, first of all, I think body work for all of us should be a non-negotiable. Whether it's massage, whether it's some kind of somatic therapy, whether it's breath work, I encourage everyone just to even get started by like consciously meditating, by consciously breathing. But for me, body work gives a lot of information. There's a lot of stories lodged in the body. Even when you're getting a massage, I would start encouraging people to really notice where they feel things, getting a little bit more familiar with what the body is telling us. The body is constantly telling us stories, where shame, guilt, frustration, disappointment, heartache, sadness, grief, all of those feelings have points on the body. So this is a really easy way to start delayering, start decompressing that trauma. Breath work is a beautiful tool. Breath work is something that we think we know how to breathe, but most of us are walking through life not breathing deeply and profoundly to the point where we're bringing oxygen into our entire bodies. And once you start really like understanding what breath work is about, your mind becomes clearer. You start to not react as much. You start to regulate yourself a lot more quickly. You're still going to get triggered, but it's going to happen like this. You're going to always have a quicker pathway to coming back to center. And of course, affirmation, self-love. And I want to kind of circle back to what you said, because it's really easy to love yourself in the good days when things are flowing nicely, but when you're in the thick of it, when you're in the weeds of it, when things are gray, that's when you really need to practice that. And this is something that I have seen a profound effects on when working with people, is to be okay with not being okay. And really, really highlighting that and loving yourself through the not okay process, and not rushing to get out of that process, because there's medicine in that low period as well. There's medicine in giving yourself space. So what could that look like when you're, in the thick of it, in like low vibrations, in your grief, your sadness, your anger, is to really observe yourself there. It's to create a safe space where you can express. So not lashing out on somebody, or not putting yourself in a social environment if you're sad and if you like want to cocoon. It's giving yourself exactly the thing that will give your inner child what they need. And oftentimes it's difficult for us to give ourselves self-love, but when we put our inner child on our shoulder, you are then refocusing to that inner child as a separate object, but it's still connected to you. You know, you have a responsibility to taking care of them and loving them. And if they were having a bad day or a sad day, or they were angry, you wouldn't speak to it the way sometimes we speak to ourselves in the way we do, or like, oh, come on, like, get your shit together, let's like get out of this funk. No, like, let them, like, help them relax, help them breathe, and help them regulate and give them what they need. You know, sometimes it could be a nap, or a nice hot soup, sometimes, you know, a treat, or just peace and quiet. So
I love
listening.
that. Yeah, and I love that you're recognizing that it's different every time, right? Some days they might need to, punch something, and some days that inner child might need a snack, and like all of those different things. And I teach the same thing where, I envision a child coming into your arms. And one of the people that I was talking to was like, I don't know how to soften. How do I soften into the emotion? People keep saying soften into the emotion. And just what you're talking about is exactly the way to do it. If you can picture a child, their body is like so tense, and then you hug them, and eventually, as you honor that feeling, they soften and
Yeah.
you soften and your embrace softens. And so that is a beautiful visual, having them on your shoulder. So amazing.
Yeah.
So do you have anything on your website, like you were talking about breath work and all that stuff? Do you have anything on your website that, people can access as a free resource, or?
Yes. I actually have a 7-day chakra reset and alignment series. So for 7 days straight, each day you get introduced to each chakra system, which is an energy center in the body, and focuses on different themes. Like, for example, the root chakra is all about feeling safe, feeling good in your space, creating space for meditation, creating space for yourself to kind of go inward. And making space is that, in the physical, but also in the energetic sense as well. So turn off all stimulations, stimulants, and really give yourself time and space to anchor in, to be with yourself. So for 7 days, they can go through their entire body and see where there's dissonance, see where those pins are, see how to dislodge them and bring breath into them. It's a video explaining, and then it's a meditation, and then action prompts and reflective questions that really make you anchor in the meditation and what came up, and how you actually feel around. Do you actually feel safe? And what does safety feel like for you? So that you can identify it and come back to it whenever you don't feel safe.
So
Yes.
fantastic. So I'm going to drop all of Roxy's link in the description below so that you can access that free chakra reset. That sounds amazing. And so, Roxy, thank you so much for joining us today. Before we sign off, are there any last words or any key messages you want to leave our audience with?
Yes, be you, and don't be afraid to be you, because there's only one of you. There
Amazing.
always will be one of you, so there will always only be one of you. So take care of them.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope that our paths cross again soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Christina.
My life is a total B word. Balanced. Subscribe below and let's see if your life can be the same.
Don't forget to play. Feel, but play. Don't forget that.